Is anybody else feeling bullish about NIO stock? I am. Let's talk about it. Happy Tuesday, by the way. It's Tuesday, February 10th, 2026. It's about a quarter till 5 p.m. Central Time here in the US as I'm recording this video, and I got a lot that I want to share. So let's get right to it. Over here on the right-hand side, this is the after hours. The current price for NIO stock right now, $4.98. And the close for NIO stock was at $4.97. This was a green day. And what was really fascinating for me is this happened on low volume, only about 30 million shares traded today. Bullish. That's what I'm thinking. But I'll get to that in just a minute as to why I think it's so bullish. Also, I want to offer this just in case anybody else is kind of passively tracking this as I am. The 4 a.m., 5-minute incremental window. This is 4 a.m. Eastern time, pre-market here in the US, was green for NIO. Maybe an indicator of what we were going to see on the day. I don't know. Perhaps I'm not worried too much about it, but it's something I'll passively track, as I stated. However, now let's talk about trade volume and why this has continued to be a very relevant indicator for us of short-term stock price action for NIO. This is just the new year here in 2026. And there has been a single day where NIO stock traded over 100 million shares. It was a recent trade day, and the stock price is holding up pretty well, especially if we just go back to the day before that, before NIO came out with, yes, some fundamental positive news, but also, like I said, that 100 million share trade volume day, and it's the only one we've seen in this new year of 2026. What happens if we go back? Let me show you. And if you will note now that when NIO has made these moves up, it has happened with bigger trade volume down below, as in multiple or numerous days of 100 million shares being traded on the daily side of things. And this has been an indicator that is really, I identified it over a year ago and have been tracking it, but this dates back to even when NIO stock made its meteoric rise back in 2020. And I'm not going to go all the way back and show you that because we talked quite a bit about that, and I'll talk about it in future videos. This is what I want to point out. I did have someone ask about the FTD data. This is the most recent data we have. We have a couple of big spikes on the FTD side of things. Now, this is just for the US market. So let's keep in mind that with the low trade volume and only being in the US market, these spikes really shouldn't be happening if there are actually shares out there available to trade. Also, because it's in my mind, and somebody from Laser's Discord actually was talking about and sharing the short volume. I don't really pay any attention to what the short volume allegedly or apparently or supposedly or is being reported as, because we can't validate it as accurate in the first place. And because, well, let's face it, if it was accurate in the first place, we wouldn't see millions and millions and millions of FTDs coming through anyway, right? And by the way, we're still only talking about the US market. Before I forget also, I'm going to link Laser's Discord in this video. In the description of this video, so you can check it out. He shares his daily view of NIO, and one of my favorite things about Laser is he's not afraid to talk about when he's been right and wrong. He's very open to and has a pretty neutral or unbiased take about things, but he has this free Discord that he's opened up, and he shares basically his thoughts on a day-to-day basis. So if you're curious about that, you can check it out. And I thank you to Laser for, I wanted to wait for his approval or okay before I actually shared the link. So I did get that, and that's why I'll share that for those who are interested. And let's move on though, because there's more. I want to pull up a couple of other things just to see where they were. So for example, on a day like today, with only 30 million roughly shares being traded throughout the course of the trade day, almost 60% of the trading was off exchange. I wonder how much was dark pool, and how crazy is it that, I mean, this just makes me wonder, how many retail investors are actually holding shares? I wonder what that real share float total and count is. And by the way, on that topic, I don't know if anybody stopped to think about this. I did mention it in my recent, and this is a lengthy video, where it's about a 40-minute video where I did a comments response and highlighted other people's comments and response, or I responded to them. And that dated back to the announcement from NIO about profitability. So that's a longer video if you want to check it out. But since this is a shorter video, I still wanted to highlight one of the things I mentioned in that video. Think about this. NIO is traded, and I mean officially traded, on the Singapore and in the US and on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. So why is it, and how is it even possible that there are triple leveraged plays on NIO in exchanges in other countries. Like that shouldn't even be possible, right? So what that leads me to wonder then, sort of following a very logical, simple train of thought, is how many fake shares are out there? How many non-shares are acting as shares and being traded? And now coming back full circle to this data point, if we are seeing the majority of volume on a very low volume day that is being traded off exchange, I'm just wondering if retail doesn't own much, much more of the actual float than people realize. And yes, sure, broker dealers can play their games and they do the lots of things that I've talked about in other videos. I'm not going to go in depth on that. Although, you know what I will do for you, in case you're curious, hang on, let me pull it up. I'll put it on the ticker so that you can do your own due diligence on this, because these are just some of the ways. If you look at the ticker, these are just some of the ways that some of the suspicious shorts and potentially bad actors have done things in the past, or are doing things not just with the NIO, but with other stocks. So this is just something I like to have an awareness of. I'm not trying to get all conspiratorial. Rather, I'm just following the simple logic of how can it be possible for there to be all these shares, triple leveraged in exchanges where NIO isn't even being traded? How is that even possible? I don't know. Food for thought. I just want to share it. Also, I did have this queued up. This is the Max Payne. And by the way, for reference point, there was a date that I was kind of concerned about. It has passed. It was January 16th. And for context, or for purposes of if you want to make a little comparison here, consider the biggest out of the money calls date that we have with the biggest number is what? Over 400,000. And this is for 2026. We're talking about June of 2026. So about, 4 months away from me recording this video. But the January 16th timeframe had over 800,000, or was it right about 800,000? Maybe it wasn't over now. I don't even know if this is all the data that was out there, but because I share it from the same source, I feel like it's at least going to be a consistent representation, meaning in this case, the number of out of the money calls has gone down significantly, or is much lower compared to what that looked like, if that makes sense. So I think it's much less likely that this is a risk for long-term investors. Now, if we see retail, let's say, start chasing and that sort of thing, maybe we see some of these, numbers get much bigger, and maybe that changes things, because at some point it might make sense for market makers to make sure that they're maximizing their profits and pinning or keeping price in a certain range. But I don't know if that's going to be the case. We also, of course, do have some fundamental things coming, like the NIO earnings. Hopefully that will be in March. And oh yeah, I did want to point this out as well, because I thought it was kind of fascinating. My last few, and shocker that this platform, if you know the platform I'm talking about, I call it Twixter, because it used to be Twitter. It's now called the X. But I had said, when the dude wanted to buy the thing several years ago, I said he's buying it for control. He wants to be able to control the narrative. And look at this. I just thought this was interesting. This is the NIO Profit Alert video that I linked, and I had about 100 or 1.5 thousand. Supposedly this is what they're telling me I had. And again, I don't know how accurate that is, but I do know, since I'm on the same platform, let's look at my most recent videos and see what kind of viewage those, supposedly got compared to that. And let's look at this as well, just to be fun, have some fun with it. 4 retweets and 14 hearts or likes, right? And if we come up here to this one, wow, about a third of the total views supposedly, and yet a bigger number comparatively of likes or hearts and retweets. And then also, once again, we have kind of a recurring theme here. In other words, after NIO came out with their announcement, their teaser, their heads up on, essentially letting us know that they had a Q4 profitable, and the numbers, we'll see the specific numbers once they share them, but they were giving people a heads up, or maybe putting them on notice. And now this platform, since that video rather, has not seen much tracking or viewage for my videos, at least. Probably means nothing. I'm not going to worry about it. And by the way, I already went on longer than I planned, but I'm just going to close this video out by saying I'm feeling bullish. How about you?